5th, 2026, 6 p.m. Board of Selectmen meeting call to order. Roll call. We have Selectman Bilder present, Selectman Griffin present, Selectman Gilman present. Department heads present. Town Administrator Brenda Pearl. The other department heads have been excused for the night. And we will start with our Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion for the consent agenda items.
I will make a motion that we accept the consent agenda as listed.
I second.
Motion made by Selectman Griffin, seconded by Selectman Bilder. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we have one appointment. Attorney Kate Miller represents the Comcast franchise renewal. How are you?
I am well, thank you so much. I think I have to bring this down a little bit.
Help yourself. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, it's nice to see you.
Good to see you.
I'm here to assist the town with negotiating a renewal of the Comcast cable TV franchise. Right now, the franchise expired around the middle of February, so it's in a holdover status. So Comcast needs to continue to comply with the terms of the existing franchise until a new franchise is negotiated and signed by the town. So there isn't a gap in terms of the authority and the rules that they're following. So we assisted the town 10 years ago, probably we started more like 12 years ago. And since that time, you've also got a competitive franchise with TDS in some parts of town through their Kearsarge telephone company. And there have been a lot in the way of developments of broadband infrastructure, and I know you've got you had an initiative with folks looking at expanding broadband. So we're in touch with Comcast to sort of see where things are. The report that I have is from 2023, and see if there are any other areas that seem not to be covered. Comcast provides broadband services for internet as well as cable TV, but weirdly, just because of the way the laws are written, the only piece of that business that the Select Board has jurisdiction over is the cable TV part. So when we talk about Comcast and providing services for broadband, as a practical matter, it comes through the same system on the same, connection to the house. So it's not that it's a totally different process. But the cable TV franchise covers only topics having to do with cable TV, and the broadband, as you probably know, doesn't have a whole lot of regulation at either the state or the federal level. So it's you sort of get a bit of a twofer when your cable company expands or goes into areas that aren't served. It brings along with it the ability to provide broadband services as well. And having more than one company in town, at least in the areas where there's overlap, gives customers some choice. And I think you may also have Fidian fiber through Consolidated Communications, at least in part of town.
That just came through. Yep.
Yeah.
It just came through. It just came through my area, but yeah, they were pushing that pretty hard.
Yes. So, and they actually have a television product which is through DirecTV. So it's not quite the same as the cable, and it's not regulated the same way. So you may be wondering, why doesn't Fidian have a franchise as well? TDS has one, Comcast has one. Their system, which provides a very cable TV-like product, doesn't actually use the cable system arrangement. It's just an internet-based product, and internet doesn't need a franchise agreement. So because they use an internet protocol and don't use the traditional lineup of cable TV channels that then the customer picks from the lineup, it's more of an open streaming service that doesn't require a cable TV franchise. So I hope you're confused now in terms of all the sort of very odd rules and regulations. But the bottom line is Comcast wants to continue to do business in town, and updating the franchise agreement is a good idea. They gave a proposal to the town before we showed up and were hired by the town, and now we're going to work on getting a better deal than what they'd initially proposed. The franchise that we put together last time, 10 years ago, is a little bit better than what they're proposing now anyway, and we've worked with them to upgrade a little bit more since then. So some of the variables that the town can negotiate for are whether or not the town wants to receive franchise fees from Comcast. That's a percentage of their gross annual revenue, just from the cable TV portion of their business. So under the cable law, the town, if it wants, can take up to 5% of their gross revenue as a fee that's paid to the town. It can go into the general fund. The town can earmark it at either through the select board or at a town meeting, but it is general revenue, so it can be used for any purpose. The catch with it is it's not free money because it's passed through to subscribers and it shows up on the bill. So if there's a 5% franchise fee, there's an additional 5% tacked onto the bill that the subscribers receive. So different towns make different choices in terms of either doing the franchise fee or not. It provides revenue to the town. It's sort of like rent for the occupation of the public right-of-way, because that's how Comcast gets around, is by using, the areas along the streets to reach all of the homes and businesses in town. So it's similar to if you had a piece of public property that you rented to a business that operated, they would pay you rent for that. So Comcast paying the franchise fee, it's sort of like rent, but it's conveniently labeled on the bill and assigned to the town. So everybody gets to know where that 5% is coming from. So the franchise fee is an option. Right now, I don't believe you're taking a franchise fee, although your agreement allows you to take up to 5%. You also have the ability to get what's called a local access TV channel on the cable system. I understand you stream your meetings, which is frankly a much more cost-effective and efficient way to do it. The cable system, because it uses cable technology, not the internet, requires dedicated equipment that is much more expensive. So many towns can put together a very good system with microphones and cameras and do a great job streaming their meetings for not a lot of money. If it was a cable system, the equipment is much more expensive, and it requires a dedicated fiber line to the head end, which is probably, I'm guessing, in maybe Concord, where Comcast sort of brings its signals down through satellite receivers and then puts it out on the cables to go out to all the communities. So if you don't have a local access channel at this point, I don't generally recommend that clients start it, just because the cost is enormous, and you've got a great system for streaming your meetings if people want to watch them. So you've got a couple options that you can exercise, but I'm not sure you want to: the franchise fees, the local access channel. We should at this point really take an assessment of if there are areas in town that are not being served by cable TV, either Comcast or TDS, that really need to be built out a bit, and see about getting Comcast's attention to do that. I'm not aware that there are any areas, and in talking with my counterparts at Comcast, I haven't heard much from them. But I would say it'll be helpful if you get any feedback, and certainly for people seeing this meeting this evening, if folks have ideas or thoughts about areas that are not receiving service, this is the time to speak up and see if we can get those covered.
I believe there was an area in town, I want to say it's out by the Canterbury line, that my first year as selectman, we talked about getting some sort of service out that way, because there was nothing out there.
I thought it was out towards Pittsfield.
Yeah, I think there were a couple of them. I did reach out to Brian Christensen over the last few weeks and asked him. I sent him the Mission Broadband report and asked if he could give me any updates or give me a contact to get updates for unserved areas, and I haven't heard anything from him. So
one of the challenges with the cable laws is that cable TV is not considered a utility. So the cable company is not required to serve every customer in the town. It used to be with the telephone company, they had to go to everybody. And there was a universal service fund that would help pay for the fact that it takes a lot more money to get to some people who are much further out of town than others. And so there's a way to sort of share costs to make that happen. Cable TV is not regulated like a utility. So it can make its own judgments about what density of homes per mile, excuse me, meets its business model for the kind of profit that it wants to take. So if right now the homes per mile in your current franchise are 20 homes per mile for aerial and 40 for underground. Now, that doesn't mean that they won't go into areas that have less density than that. They do have a cost-sharing formula, and there are times when they will waive that requirement. I know there was an area around the golf course which had kind of an unusual configuration where the conduits were not along the roads. It kind of went through people's lawns. I think that has all been served. That was a sort of a thorn in everyone's side 10 years ago, but I think that's been addressed. So there are times when it makes sense for Comcast to do some work and get some customers, whether or not it meets the density formula.
Gotcha.
So if there are some areas that are unserved, I think this is the time to see if there are ways to address that. And the town is also able to get some courtesy cable TV services. I don't want to oversell that because it's only at the basic tier level. So it's basically the broadcast channels, and I think they put the weather station in there as well. So for municipal and school locations, that basic tier service can be available as a courtesy to the town without charge. They do not provide free internet service, which is often something that people ask for. But they do have an interesting program for families who may have a hard time affording internet service. So now I'm talking about internet, even though technically you don't have jurisdiction over it, just so you're aware of it, and I can leave you some flyers. They have a program for folks who are in subsidized housing, veterans, students whose families of students on free and reduced price lunch. A lot of different public benefit programs will meet the requirements for this service, and they'll provide an internet product for, I think it's about $15 a month, and they'll get a one computer for the family they charge about $100 for that PC. So it's a great thing to get to your school system, to get into the packet that people get at the beginning of the year when they get lots of paperwork from the schools, to make sure that those families that are eligible are able to take advantage of that. So I'm not finding mine. Do you have yours? Okay, thanks. So I'll just pass this out.
Right.
And I'm not shilling for Comcast, but I do appreciate that they work hard to try to get an affordable product to
Thank you.
people who are not able to pay the more expensive commercial rates. And what I propose in terms of our next steps is getting an updated proposal from Comcast that's closer to what we already have in the town and better for the town in terms of some improvements we've negotiated. Find out if you hear anything from folks in town about areas that need more service from the cable TV people. I'm happy to see if we can try to extend that service a little bit. My guess is that this will be a pretty streamlined negotiation. There isn't a lot that we have latitude to negotiate over, things like the price that Comcast charges, the way that services are packaged in tiers, all that stuff that people get kind of annoyed about, we don't have any jurisdiction over. So the things that bother people the most are often the ones that we can't really help with. but trying to make sure there's service where there should be service and letting you know what the options are in terms of franchise fees and other things, so you can make a decision about how you'd like to proceed.
You had said 10 years ago there was a better work product than what they put out this year. What are some of the things that they?
When they know that we're in the town, they tend to give a different proposal. I think they didn't realize that we were in the town. So we got a proposal that is a little less generous than what they typically get and a little bit more restrictive. Okay. My guess is that we will, because we've been able to do this in other communities, be able to boost the performance bond that they provide. A performance bond guarantees not just if they do work and damage the right-of-way that they repair it, but also it requires that they comply with all the material terms of the franchise agreement. So if they're not performing their service in some way, that's a way to get their attention. The performance bond guarantees that performance. That is right now set at $10,000. They're typically doing $50,000, which is a better figure. They're providing a little bit more in the way of insurance coverage, similar to the existing coverage that you have, but with an additional $2 million beyond what they're providing now. So right now they're offering, what our current franchise agreement requires is $1 million in property damage, $1 million for personal injuries, a $5 million umbrella policy, and then general motor vehicle and other type of tort and workers' comp insurance. Now they typically do an additional layer of $2 million, which if there's an accident or something, that's beneficial. They do indemnify the town for any injuries or damage that occurs because of their actions. Gotcha. One of the things that we've been struggling with, not so much with Comcast, but with two other cable companies in the state, is the company closing down their customer service offices. So up in the North Country, Charter has closed their office up in the north of Mount Washington, so the closest place for people in Littleton is about an hour away. Yeah. In the Breeze Line Company in the Lakes region closed their location in the Lakes region, so the closest was Rochester or Concord, which for people in the heart of the Lakes region, that's not great. So people in Moulton Borough and Belmont and Guilford were pretty frustrated. The reason that the cable companies are looking to sort of minimize their bricks and mortar responsibilities is that eventually most customers are going to be giving up cable and are going to just be streaming on the internet and getting all their video content eventually through the internet. Comcast and the other cable companies are still willing to do 10-year franchise agreements, so I don't think that's going away anytime in the next 10 years. But they are looking to trim their costs, and the customer service offices require a bricks and mortar location for people to swap out equipment, pay bills, things like that. It's required under the federal regulations for the Cable Act that there be what are called conveniently located customer service offices. Now, that's not really defined in the law, and even though people in New Hampshire are pretty tough, driving an hour from Littleton down to Conway is not conveniently located, or, an hour from Moulton Borough to Rochester, that's not convenient, especially because some of those roads are not great. So we've been starting to require some language that addresses what is convenient, and we've tended to do it either with a mileage definition, so 30 miles or 30 minutes, or specific locations that are geographically fairly close to the communities that are doing the franchises.
You have a customer service location in Concord? Is that the one on Store Street?
There is one in Concord, yes, that's exactly right. And Comcast has not shown any indication that it wants to start closing its customer service offices, but having seen it with two other cable companies in the state, I'm concerned that may happen because it's, any business is going to look for ways to cut their costs if they're losing customers. And the demographic for cable customers tends to be older folks for whom driving is harder and who may want to do their business in person as opposed to using the internet to print out a label and, then drop off the package at a UPS store or something like that. So there are other alternatives rather than the bricks and mortar offices, but that's not what the federal regulations say, and that's not always what the customers really want. So, that may be a topic of conversation with Comcast. I'm not concerned that they're a bad actor in this area. They have been very good, and they tend to have quite a lot of customer service offices relative to the number of customers they have. But I do see the trend towards the future, and want to try to bake into the franchise language that will be important 5 or more years from now.
Right. So under a new agreement, the internet is definitely off the table for town buildings?
Free internet, absolutely. That's correct. Yeah, it's not something that Comcast will do. They used to do a very, very limited program of free internet service to schools and libraries, but that was like one residential line, and they've discontinued that. That grew out of a court case from the 1990s, which they've finally let go. So yes, unfortunately, they don't do that. Breeze Line in the Lakes region does. So they do a discounted internet service for municipal locations. But Comcast draws a pretty bright line between what they're obligated to do under the Cable Act and the internet service that's not covered.
Great work.
Any questions?
Questions?
I just had mine answered.
So what we'll do is send a proposal that we work out with Comcast to you, and I'll do I usually do kind of a side-by-side memo, just sort of explaining what are the differences, and what kinds of things have we looked to try to improve a bit. Once you are happy and we can have further conversations either in person or by telephone or however you'd like to do it, the next step, once the board is comfortable with a proposal, is to have a public hearing so the public can weigh in and ask questions. And often the questions are things like price and packaging of service tiers, which is frustrating, or internet, which you really don't have any jurisdiction over.
Right.
But that's what the law says.
Is there a date that we have to have this?
So I wouldn't say it is super urgent. However, it has expired, and it's better to have it papered up. I don't think Comcast has got any interest in just walking away from the town at this point. They are still making money doing this, so I don't think they're going to give it up. But eventually, if you didn't renew it, you would be at risk of them walking away someday. So it's better to be able to hold them to a current papered up franchise agreement.
And probably the longer we sit on it, the less negotiation power we have, right?
Yeah, I mean, there is, not that I encourage people to wait until things expire, but they are really eager to get this one renewed, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think we're in a good spot.
And I think with Concord being Concord, I don't see, as far as brick and mortar, necessarily disappearing from us anytime soon.
I agree with you.
Fortunately, we're a town over, not 5 towns over, so.
Right,
Right.
I think that's right. Okay.
Great job, thank you very
Well,
much.
thank you.
Thank you.
That was interesting. Yeah. Glad you showed up. Department head updates. Brenda?
Just a couple of quick things. This Thursday, the 7th, high school scholarship is the high school scholarship deadline. Next Thursday, the 14th, is the college scholarship deadline. So we've not gotten very many scholarship applications. So hopefully people are paying attention to those deadlines, and we'll get those applications in. Tomorrow morning at 8:30, we have an open enrollment meeting for our full-time employees here upstairs. And yesterday, the 2 junkyards in town, I sent out their junkyard renewal letters. Moving forward with those for the year. That's all I have. Oh, and I've contacted Community Power, asked for a meeting, have not heard back from them yet. So once I do, I'll let you know when that meeting is.
What are the 2 junkyards? Lanes?
Yeah, lanes and greens
Where's Greens?
on Laura Ridge Road and the Bumpagan Road, Laura Ridge Road.
Is that big? Kinda sorta.
Good size.
Yeah,
Can't really see it, it's up behind the,
yeah.
go by the house, go up around, stuff.
Are they active or is it like like antique and do they sell things or,
Yeah, they're active.
so they're active?
Yeah. Any questions, Brendan?
That's it for me?
New business, ambulance invoice write-offs. This number gets higher and higher every time.
No, I think I gave you the second thing
Yeah.
as well. Yep.
Oh, is that mine?
Oh,
Let me just
you'll need
talk
it
about that.
next, yeah.
Need a motion?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I will make a motion that we write off the following ambulance invoices. Account 19-12022, invoice amount $1,320. Account 21-4993, invoice amount $1,200. Account 22-1450, invoice amount $1,200. Account 22-10812, invoice amount $1,200. Account 22-5486, invoice amount $1,300. Account 21-3922, invoice amount $1,220. Account 22-3838, invoice amount $1,340. Account 22-17536, invoice amount $1,220, for a total of $10,000.
A second?
Okay, motion made by Selectman Griffin, seconded by Selectman Bilden. Any discussion?
Nope.
I'll just add, these are like uncollected funds that we, apparently we have the fire chief works very hard to try to collect these funds. He has a company that goes out and tries to spend their time on collecting the same funds. So when it gets to us, this is like, it's absolutely rock bottom. All attempts have been made. I don't know what that means.
We're good.
Okay. So, long story short, I think this is something that we do quite a bit, but I haven't seen that money, that kind of money. So, have to get with chief and maybe see what else is a possible way, I don't know. So. All right, that's all I got. Take a vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, this is an email from Info Community Power New Hampshire. There's a couple highlighted items, you guys have seen this, I signed off on it. Any thoughts or concerns on the verbiage here?
I don't know. I'd like to get them in here.
Yeah, I would too.
Some of the language in here is just a little on the, Community Powers does not intend to re-enroll in customers. So they don't re-enroll in customers, but they don't necessarily plan on it. But they may not intend to, but they may actually do it.
But they are, right.
I just, reading through that, I highlighted everything that I thought was kind of suspicious or curious. But I guess ultimately we need to get them in here.
I think we need to get them in here, and I think we need to start working on a plan to get out of this thing.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah,
I mean, we can do both. I mean, we can get them in here and lodge our complaints with them, and what's our problem is, and what's our problem with the residents, and what they're coming up with, and and the frustration they're all dealing with on the same side, on the same burner, we can go attempt every way we can to get out of this thing.
Yeah.
So, but I know we have a couple things from legal, correct, that they've responded back, and I think that we've been given a playbook anyways of how we can handle this, so.
Yeah.
To me, the big issue is how much money to get out of this. What's it gonna cost us? Because it is gonna require legal fees.
Yeah.
We're gonna need an attorney.
Yeah, it's
And we're
gonna,
gonna-
yeah.
we're gonna
I
have
think
to-
it's gonna be legal fees. I don't think we're gonna actually end up owing them anything out of the contract.
No.
We have to notify them,
Yeah.
which I'm sure we want that legally sound.
Yeah.
So that'll be, you know, the dollars that we're spending is
Yep.
making sure what we're sending them is proper legal
But I'd like to,
verbiage.
I'd like to see an amount. Like, what are we looking at? Let's look at all options on the table, you know? So,
You know, because
I
they
agree.
hold a little too much power with this contract.
Yeah, too loose.
Too much is on them and not enough is on us.
Anthony?
Do we want to have, if we're going to have that meeting, you said you want to do it separate from a regular selectmen's meeting, do we want to have town attorney attend? Would that be an option? Rather than the
I don't think
emails back
should
Do we have
and
a-
forth?
Yeah, I mean, well, they have access to our meetings, correct? Recordings,
Yeah,
so, and based on the last time we had something come like this and the attorney sat there, they just sat silent all the time, so.
Well, I was just thinking
Gotcha.
if maybe if we had, you know, maybe a Q&A kind of
yeah,
things that we can ask them and maybe get their legal answers on so we can be better prepared
okay,
for the public meeting.
sure,
Because the public's gonna come at us, not a lawyer, so,
100%.
right.
Okay.
You want to do that during a regular meeting or have a side meeting?
I
a work
think
session.
that should be its own thing.
Can we do it like, like an hour before or something, or like 2 hours before a regular meeting? So we got it fresh in our mind and we're not lacking.
But the closer you get to 3 and 4, 4 o'clock, you're not gonna get the,
We're not gonna,
Draft.
yeah, we're not gonna get the
We're not
people
going to get the people,
Right.
right?
turn out.
keep it at like
We're
6:30, 7
better, we're
o'clock.
better off at 6 or,
Yeah,
No, I meant a meeting with the town and lawyer, the
that we can do.
attorney, like an hour or two before, or
Oh,
whatever.
gotcha.
We should make
And then
a-
have our regular meeting at the same time, 6
We can set up a
o'clock.
phone call.
So everything's still fresh in our mind for the
Yeah.
next, for the meeting.
We won't need a meeting, we don't need it on public for that, it's with council, so we can go in the room and have a discussion via
Right.
speakerphone with council,
yeah.
so that can happen.
Yeah.
So pick a date they can come, and then we'll set up a consultation with the attorneys an hour before that
Okay,
via phone,
yep,
go from there.
okay,
That works.
that makes sense, yeah. It's a good plan.
Alright, so. Whole business.
You're thinking, Mark?
I can go if you want time to think.
I'm always thinking,
So we need to set up a date with fire chief, new code enforcement,
Yep,
Lindsay,
yep,
yourself, me or somebody, to isolate and roundtable job descriptions, job tasks, job everything. So I think we set that up, we even mentioned that last time when we approved to move forward with the code enforcement person, that we said we needed this meeting, he agreed, Lindsay agreed, so we need to get that off the ground. I really don't want to go too much farther without that.
Okay.
So
I agree.
I think there's lane travel issues, and I think and no one needs to be crossing in the other person's lane. But we also don't want to drop the ball on anything either.
Right.
And there's a bunch of job tasks that are currently in the middle of that's been inspected, that now someone new's coming in, they need to know where they pick up the ball, what's been said before versus, you know what I'm saying? Just kind of like an easy transition. So, I know fire chief's gone till Monday, heading to Florida, be back Monday. So sometime next week.
Okay. During the day or in the evening?
I can do evenings.
Actually, Lindsay's out of the office Wednesday, Thursday, Friday next week,
Okay.
so she could,
We can do Tuesday evening.
yeah,
I could be there for that.
okay. What time you want to do, 6?
Yeah. Or 5 even. 5's fine.
5?
Yeah.
All right.
Any more news on movement? I'm getting messages from someone on the board, on the committee, but any more news on the card reader for books?
No, because we haven't really done too much with that one yet. Any day now, we should be getting the one that we got for the transfer station and for the land use. And then once we got those set up, we were gonna get one for the town office, for the selectmen's office and the rec committee, and that would be the same one for the historical society.
Okay,
But we can.
so it's in
certainly-
progress.
It's definitely in progress.
Can we get books in the windows for sale
What do you mean in the windows?
at each station?
We can. I'm concerned if we put books in that lobby, they're gonna disappear.
How about if we put them behind the glass? Just one book behind the glass?
We can do that.
Just put
For sale.
Yep, yep, we can do that.
I want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
I know,
I know I caused the problem, so now I'm trying to be part of the solution. But they
yes,
gotta get going.
yeah,
And I talked to that person a couple times, and
okay,
I feel, well, that person said to me, he said, I don't have any control over these things. I said, well, I'll head it up.
okay.
So,
Yep, we'll do that.
yeah, that works. Even if we just put one behind each, I mean, the tax class, Ashley's, both
Yeah.
Ashleys,
Yep,
so
okay.
figure something out. In my understanding, I guess another bookstore or somebody just reached out and said they want more books,
Oh, good,
so that's good.
yeah,
So,
okay.
Oak Hill, we discussed that, right? I know I'm missing something, but. You wanna talk about this?
Sure. Yeah, we got one. So, maybe comparing to other towns or noticing deficiencies in our own personnel policies, kind of threw something together to have a policy on confidentiality. I know it's come up at certain times. We wonder how stuff works in town. So maybe a confidentiality policy would help curb that. And I wrote something up that I've given to all you guys and asked, for feedback. I'd like to get clarification if we can from town attorney as to why maybe some other towns have it kind of with this language and you guys don't feel comfortable with it. I'd like to get a definite on that.
I feel comfortable with it, I just don't feel comfortable. I feel comfortable with it, just understanding that there's nothing you can do for elected officials. You can't do that, you can't hold them to a certain criteria. They're not an employee, they don't follow the rules and regulations,
They don't fall under the personnel
personnel
policies.
plans, nothing, so.
All right,
So we've got people on boards all over town.
Not board, just, well, yes, elected people though, town clerk.
Right,
Right.
to planning, zoning,
Treasurer,
right.
not treasurer, the treasurer? Yeah, the treasurer,
Treasurer, tax collector,
tax
town
collector,
clerk,
those
Clerk,
three
tax
positions.
school board,
Right.
planning board and zoning board.
Because there's not a lot in here for teeth to begin with. I guess there's no, you're subject to, whatever. Maybe that could be added if somebody felt comfortable with that. I just wanted kind of something on there
Yep.
that if we found out something, we could talk to somebody about it.
Yep.
Because it's a written policy that they may be in violation of.
Yep.
Okay.
I don't know what
Just the best way to move forward.
everybody else thinks, but
I mean, I'd probably just, same as Dwayne as the first, I mean, elected officials, I think it looks great, besides that, yeah.
Nope, right.
Should have something in there, in our policies and stuff, in our personnel.
right.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's been various things throughout departments for a while, that we're curious how things propagate. So
Yep.
maybe something like this could give us a little bit more of a reason to maybe pull somebody in front of us, go, hey, tell us what you know. You know,
Yeah.
how's this working?
Absolutely.
What we do with it beyond that is obviously up to the board.
Yep, I like it. Anything else?
Okay.
Important dates, May 21st, 7 PM, Planning Board meeting, May 28th, 7 PM, Zoning Board of Adjustments, May 29th, 6 PM, Candy Bar Bingo Barn, at the barn.
Candy bar.
At the barn,
At the barn.
Charlie's Barn, Russ went over there with Tom, and they can't really isolate the problem of the smell over there, but apparently it might be coming from the Historical Society. Like all the old stuff in there. So
No, it smelled different. Old stuff is, it smells different, I don't know.
They've determined the odor's coming from that room, so that they're gonna have to work on something. I think Russ turned the units on to dry it out, just get the moisture out of the building, so on and so forth, so.
Can we,
And also, I was brought to my attention, do we have cameras in that building?
Yes.
historical only? From what I understand, I learned from historical, the gentleman that, he showed me around that in historical area, he said there was cameras in there. Or
No, there's no cameras
sorry,
in
yes,
historical, but
correct,
there's
you're
one in
right.
the main meeting.
Correct, that,
Yes.
yes, 100%, thank you,
Yeah.
Where
yes.
does that, who monitors that?
Nobody monitors it. We've got it so that if something happens, we can go back and look at it, but nobody's
Gotcha,
watching them.
gotcha. Do we have signs in there?
I believe we do have signs in there. I think we put them up when the cameras went up.
All right.
Yep.
Can we do an air test in there? Both rooms? The food area or wherever they do their testing? And/or leave it, because you have to leave the doors closed a certain amount of time, and have one in the Historical Society part too.
Yeah, we can do it, see what it's gonna cost and go from there. See what kind of monitoring we can put in there.
See what it would take,
Yeah.
Brenda, see what it would cost us, and I think it's the right thing to do, because it just had some funky smells in there.
Other than that,
I got one more thing.
you had your chance. Go ahead.
Go on the website,
Yes.
Right there.
Communications Council meeting. Monday, May 18th, 2026, 6 PM to 8 PM. Address, Loudon, New Hampshire. Is that at Charlie's Barns? Is that Zoom?
As far as I know, it's Zoom
Does it start
still.
at 6 or does it start at 5 or? 'cause
I don't
they've
know.
pulled all kinds of weird things.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll
Okay.
have to check on that.
There's
But I'm
somebody
pretty
we
sure
can
they're still
check.
running all their Zoom.
Yeah. Pen stealer.
What do you think of the website other than that?
Other than
Are you
that,
liking it?
it's,
I like it.
I do too.
yeah, it's a lot better. Maybe something we can think about. I know,
Yeah.
go back to the homepage. We have like the little news flash thing.
Yep.
Kind of reminds me of, I've seen examples of other towns, they do mailers necessarily, but we don't have to go that far. But definitely like some kind of, maybe pinned to the top of the news flash is, if we could do some kind of quarterly something. I can give you an example if you want, just maybe so you can kind of get a better handle on it, but the more information we have on there, I feel the more everybody's,
Yeah, and it did come to Lindsay's attention last week that we were missing clicking a little button. So when we do a news flash, anybody who has signed up for notices to their email or to their phones or whatever, they weren't getting the news flash one because it was a little thing that was
Check
missed,
here.
a little
Yeah,
check.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's been changed. So people
Yeah.
will now get, if they've signed up to get the news flash,
administration teething pains.
yep,
Yeah.
yep, they will start getting that. So that's a good thing.
Okay, no? I'm done this time.
I'm not. So I just thought of something. So, when I attended the school board hearings and meetings and all that stuff, they had a PowerPoint presentation to play and go through for during budget time, and I like that idea.
Yeah.
And I had brought it to Mark's attention on it. Is there someone I can lean on to work with someone and get that format done at some point in time down the road?
For budget time?
Yeah, to make one.
Yeah.
Just start the process.
Yeah.
Make one, and then we can add information when we want to
Yeah.
add information.
Yeah.
But that's a lot easier to sit there with that PowerPoint than it is to read from here and then read these forms.
Yep.
It's on a screen, it'll be on all the screens,
Absolutely.
it'll be a little more transparent, it'll be a little more, people will be able to see it, hear it.
Yep. I've had that conversation with the moderator too, and we talked to the school and to the audio people at the school that we can do that same thing at
Get
town meeting. We
screens.
can put the warrant article that you're talking about right up there.
Yeah.
And people can see it, they know exactly what we're talking about. If there's an amendment made,
Yeah.
we can post that up on the screen. So yes, in the same vein,
Yeah.
we are talking about the budget meetings and the public hearings for the budget.
I've done
Having all
PowerPoints
those
before,
things.
but
Yeah.
I don't know if I have the time other than help someone do it.
Yeah.
I don't have time to take the whole thing
Yeah.
on myself.
Yeah, I
But
think
if
between
I can
myself
work
and
with somebody-
Lindsay and Rodney
Yeah.
and you, we can get it done for sure.
Yeah.
think
And
it's
just
a great
have
idea.
have a plate, and, I don't know, I guess we just would use these, I guess, and.
And when those things are created, they can very easily go right onto the website for people to just
Right, yeah.
look
Yeah.
at.
I just think that might help us out a little bit this year,
Yep, awesome.
but, okay, that's all I got. Public comment.
Sure.
Come on up, sir. Thought I'd never ask, huh? He's like, boy, I wish this guy would shut up.
Just start with this, so I could have already been home.
All right. Busy meeting. Thank you very much for hearing me, gentlemen. Larry Caruso, 94 Chichester Road in Loudon. Couple of questions. The attorney that was here, Kate Miller, is she an attorney for Comcast or an attorney for Loudon?
Loudon.
She is, okay. That's good. Do you know, I'm only asking this because I've heard, going back a few years, different things, you never know what's true. Was there ever, and this will be, I guess, in the original Comcast contract with the town, was there ever in part of the contract where they would have to provide the closed circuit TV for selectmen's meetings and other things? And the only reason I'm asking that is if it's contract negotiation time and maybe you're looking for other things, like it was mentioned, internet for the town, that maybe services that were guaranteed in the contract but never implemented could be negotiated for other things. You're not in the best position. I mean, I was involved in a couple of meetings years and years ago when cable companies like Comcast were rolling out and towns asked for all sorts of things and got it.
Yeah.
So it's, that ship sailed, but still, if there's something that they should be offering and that they're not, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. So, as you know, as you heard, I think we're still in negotiations, and it's definitely worth searching that out. I mean,
Yeah,
I wasn't here, but the last contract, so I don't, no one on this board was here the last contract, so it's but that, apparently this attorney was, so maybe we can brainstorm it and see, hey, listen, what is, I know it's not as solid as the 1 year, 10 years ago, like that's the question I asked, like why are we're supposed to be moving forward, not backwards? Why are we less than what we were last year, or 10 years ago? So maybe that's one of the things we can ask her about.
okay. Just something to think about,
Yeah.
you know? And as far as the community power thing, it's encouraging to hear, it really is, to hear that you guys are looking into this. It really, really is encouraging. And
I can tell you on that the town has been very vocal, a lot of people have been very vocal about this whole thing, and it actually is frustrating for us, because I feel like we're unable to solid, quick effort to solve the problem is not in the works. It's going to be a long problem. So we're trying to find the right way to, what road to take to get to the quickest road to get to the problem and solve it and be done with this issue, and we're getting roadblocks. So it's, we appreciate everybody's patience, and we are trying. Mark, if anybody, is probably the most that's trying on this board of getting this thing headed in the right direction.
Good.
So, you know.
Thank you.
We support him and whatever he needs to do, and somehow we'll get to the end. And again, there's a cost factor. So how much is it going to cost for us to get out of this? If it's attorney's fees, how much is that going to be? We don't want to keep on compounding, spending money to fix a problem. So
No. But
we got to fix the problem.
if they're doing something that's not legal per the RSA, like I don't know, I read the RSA and I can't find in there where they're specifically allowed to continue opting people in. And I'm not an attorney, of course, but I don't see it in layman's terms. And not the brightest bulb on the tree, but I'm not the dimmest either. And I don't see it.
From the best I can
So-
determine through that whole thing, it seems to revolve around a lot of different factors of what they consider a change in billing. And when there's a change in billing, they have the right to opt people back in. So, for instance, and I know it's probably very rare, but if the the bill's always been in your name and you want to put it in your wife's name, that would be considered a change in billing, and she would get opted in automatically. So there are exceptions that I've seen. I'm not leaning on those as the only explanation as to why they're doing what they're doing, but I'm sure that that's going to be something about what we hear if we can get them in here to discuss with us.
In other words, leave all the bills in your wife's name.
And I can understand that. If a property changes hands, then they have another, run at the barrel, I guess.
Right. Right.
Rental properties, things like
There's a
that.
lot of those specific little instances that could trigger that.
Yes.
And I don't know as we really want to take too much time or money or lawyers' fees to try to figure them all out.
No.
It's just something that I've noticed and that I've seen in the language that kind of strikes my nerve the wrong way.
Yes, and the one that I think would question the legality of it all is when a Loudon resident, well, this is what happened to me, you guys get a copy of the letter I received.
Yep.
When a Loudon resident goes and switches their service to one of the other energy providers and then switches back, that's what I believe triggered my
Yep.
second
It's a change of service.
opt-out situation. That should not be the case. We should not have to worry as residents, and this is the thing, is what's reasonable and what's not reasonable. Lawyers use that word all the time, reasonableness. And I don't think it's reasonable for any of us to say, go to Direct Energy and then go, ooh, Eversource is going to be cheaper. We're going to switch to Eversource. And then have to worry that you're going to have to get,
Okay,
you're going to get
opted
opted
in
in,
automatically.
or have to make another telephone call at your expense of time. They have to make another telephone call. Could be expensive money if you're a self-employed person. In order to make sure that they don't get you again.
Yeah, there's other situations with people in town that have opted out, they get out, and all of a sudden not, and there was no change of anything, and they're opted back in again, and then they had to go back in and opt out again. So there's nothing that actually triggered them to put you back in again for some reason, and then, so anyways, this whole opt-in, opt-out has always been confusing and been a problem since this format left the ground. So, and everybody understood, why do I have to opt out? Why can't I just... it's up to me to opt in if I wanted to, and it's never sat right, and here we are today.
And the way it was sold to us was one time. One opt-out.
Yeah.
That's the way it was sold to us, so.
Yeah.
Okay, that's about all I have to say, I guess. Is there anything interesting in that email, that you guys are gonna release the email from Comcast? And not Comcast, from Community Power?
I don't know if we're gonna release it.
be a public record.
It would be available under 91A, so if you requested, you could fill out a form and get it requested that way. It's just an explanation of what their perception is and of what's going on, I guess.
I think it's better having seen that they send, emails, to just get them back in here and make it a public meeting, and, we can have the townspeople here as well. I'd like to hear some of these things, not read them. And if I hear them, then, it just gives us all a little more concern for why we're in this and how we can get out of this. Like, the chairman said, the quickest, most efficient way without spending as much town money on lawyers to get us out, If we can go from A to B and we can do it in X amount of time, and it's gonna cost us X amount of dollars, seeing stuff in emails that I like doesn't really matter. Let's start the process and get us out of this, and then just be done with the whole thing finally.
And there's nothing saying they won't show. They've always been pretty upfront and coming in here, and even in the rate increases and all that stuff, they've come in and taken shots on that. But so I think this is gonna. I think that meeting's gonna happen for sure, and I think we'll all get to have our say and figure things out. And I think that we'll have a great direction of where we're gonna head after that. But in the meantime, we're gonna do our own effort. We're gonna run this way, but we're also gonna run this way and see what's out there for options, and not just rely on what happens in this meeting to move forward. We're gonna have to seek other alternative measures to see how we can combat this. So.
Well, it'll be great if we can resolve this with a meeting. It really would be.
Yep.
I guess I'm not overly optimistic because they said what they said at the meetings I attended.
Yep.
And then
And
we're
here we
back
are.
on their word.
Yep.
So,
And here we are.
anyways. All right, I appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming in. All right. Nobody else? I will make a motion to go in non-public under RSA 91A32B, the hiring of any person as a public employee, and RSA 91A32C, matters in which if discussed in public would likely affect adversely the reputation of any person other than a member of this board unless such person requests an open meeting. This exemption shall extend to include applications for assistance or tax abatement or waiver of fee, fine, or other levy if based inability to pay or poverty of the applicant.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Selectman Gilman, seconded by Selectman Griffin. Roll call vote. Selectman Bilodeau.
Yes.
Selectman Griffin.
Yes.
Selectman Gilman, yes. We are now in non-public.